David.
Yes, Laura.
What do you think makes a person iconic?
Ooh, iconic. They have to be somebody who really stands out from the rest. Like there can be other people similar to them, but they are the one that you really think of whenever you have a certain subject in mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like, give me some examples. Who do you think are some icons?
Well, so let's see here. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we consider him iconic for the civil rights movement. You can think of, the British royal family can be iconic for just royal family drama. Steven Spielberg is an iconic film director. I mean, I think that those are probably examples of icons people might consider.
Do you think we'll be podcast icons one day?
Gosh, I hope so. Tell your friends to like and subscribe.
Had to get that plug in there. I love that. Well, I love the fact that we can say that we actually have had icons walking the halls of Cardinal Glennon, and we're going to have two of them who I feel like together as a pair, they're an icon, but individually they're icons. I don't know, David, how would you describe the two of these people together?
Oh, man.
Like if you had to give a analogy.
Maybe like a Sonny and Cher, only the height differentiation you got to reverse.
Oh, yeah, that's true. A little bit. A little bit. Well, we're going to have, as you know, our two most respected, I shouldn't say the most respect because the whole team is respected, but two of the most well-loved and most respected cardiothoracic surgery icons joining us today. We are going to have Dr. Andrew Fiore.
Amazing.
And Barb Kountzman.
Fantastic.
And we are so excited to have them come on, and they're going to be sharing their inspirations for their careers here at Glennon, the changes that their field in cardiothoracic surgery, the changes the field has seen through the years, what they're most excited about for the future of cardiothoracic surgery. And plus, we're going to get to know them personally a little bit more. Like what's behind Barb's signature red lipstick and fun stuff like that.
I can't wait to find out. I mean, the two of them go together like hand in hand. You talk to anybody in the hospital and they can't think of one without the other. So I'm excited to hear from both of them.
All right. You ready?
Let's go.
Let's do it. I want to give a huge warm welcome to our two guests, and I'm going to introduce you separately because you each deserve your own little moment here. So I want to give a huge welcome to Dr. Andrew Fiore. Dr. Fiore, have you ever been on a podcast before?
No, this is the first time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give our listeners a little bit of your background. You grew up in Brooklyn. You graduated SLU Medical School in 1977. You have 4 board certifications. You did your first operation in March of 1988. You've done over 4,000 operations.
Wow.
And have over 47 years experience. Am I correct?
That's pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. Okay. Pretty accurate. I'll take that. Yeah. And a second.
Close enough.
Close enough. All
That's
right.
good.
I'll take that. And a second huge warm welcome to Barb Kountzman. How you doing today?
I'm good.
Well, let's let folks know a little bit of your background as well. You studied nursing at the Lutheran School of Nursing class of 1981. You came to Glennon in 1981. You were hired before graduation from nursing school, have spent over 40 years at Cardinal Glennon. You started in the pediatric intensive care unit as a staff nurse. Then you became a charge nurse, the assistant head nurse, and were also the ECMO coordinator. And you have been the cardiovascular clinical nurse for the last 25 plus years.
Yes.
Yes. Pretty accurate?
Accurate.
Pretty accurate. Okay. Now, our first questions. First one's for you, Dr. Fiore. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell us about your inspiration to become a surgeon.
Well, my father was a general surgeon, so he was He was a surgeon before the war. He was a battalion surgeon during the war, and then he had a very, very busy surgical practice after the war in Brooklyn. And so I grew up in a surgeon's home. So I got introduced to general surgery from the beginning. And he took me to the hospital with him many, many, many times. And when I got to medical school, he took me to the operating room with him. So I watched him operate. So I that's how I got interested in surgery.
Wow.
So did you start out in adult heart surgery?
Well, you have to, or then you did. I mean, we all started out doing adult general surgery. First, we had to go do general surgery for 5 years, and then we did adult cardiac surgery with about 6 or 8 months of pediatrics, and then most of us did some extra pediatric training to focus just on that area, because they're quite different with pediatric and adult cardiac surgery. Is very different.
What got you to switch over to pediatric after your initial training with adults?
Well, I think it was the experience of my mentor at Indiana University, a cardiac surgeon by the name of Harold King. Excellent technical surgeon, very smart guy, brilliant guy, and made a lot of contributions to our specialty, which we still use some of the things that he did. And he impacted me in a very direct way to go into congenital. Yeah.
So you made the switch to pediatrics because of your mentor. Is there something that brought you to Cardinal Glennon specifically?
When I was doing cardiac surgery in Indiana, 300 miles away, it became very apparent that but a significant number of the leaders in adult cardiac surgery in the United States of America were at St. Louis University at the time I was finishing my training. And so I admired the surgeons that were here, people like Val Willman, George Kaiser, Rick Barner, those three, Glenn Pennington, Hilla Lax, I'll mention them later. I knew they were really intrepid surgeons, phenomenal cardiac surgeons. That's all they did was cardiac surgery, and they really built a phenomenal program in St. Louis. And so I knew I wanted to go back and work with them every day.
I have a question that I'd like to ask both of you individually. I'm going to start with you, Barb. So both of you have been in the cardiovascular field for multiple decades. So I want to touch upon some of the big advances that you have seen in your field over the past 20 years. Barb, can you speak to some of the things that you're seeing now that are so different from 20 years ago as far as how technology and patient care has advanced and what that's doing for patients now and for the future?
I think one of the most important thing is the fetal care program. Years ago, we didn't know children had congenital disease. A lot of those kids came in extremis because they didn't know, and they were a lot sicker before we operated, or before he operated. I just talked a lot.
And then kissed them.
But anyway, so now it's nice that we know ahead of time if a child has congenital heart disease, then the delivery is scheduled. All parties involved are informed that the child's been delivered so that we can offer the best possible care for the child. That's probably one of the big things. A lot of those children now with single ventricle anatomy were children that died, that they just didn't know. They just didn't make it to a tertiary care facility before they realized what was wrong. A lot of the procedures that used to be done in the operating room specifically are now taken care of in the cath lab, which is much better for patient care and long-term outcomes to have them come in, get a procedure done, and go home within 24 hours versus heart surgery, which requires bypass and a longer length of stay. Parents are more informed of their child's congenital heart disease by knowing ahead of time. We still have a child come through. As a matter of fact, the child today that we operated. So it's a little harder for the families because they're dealing with their child having to have heart surgery and trying to figure out exactly what that is.
Kind of an explore as you go as opposed to knowing ahead of time.
Well, and I think another thing, a big impact is transesophageal echo prior to an operation.
Can you please explain what that long word is? I'm not a medical person.
So, I'm stepping on his field right now. Okay. I'm on the outside of the OR. He's on the inside. But anyway, before they operate, before they go on bypass, they do a transesophageal echo. So just the same kind as on the chest. They go down through the esophagus, through a probe, bounce sound waves off the backside of the heart. They get a different view of the heart. Then they proceed to go on bypass, do the operation, and then they do another one at the end of the operation before they come off bypass. Back when I was a real nurse, the child came back from the OR. If the child didn't do well, you had to assume that there was a problem with the repair. Now, with the transesophageal echo, they can decide and fix it right then and there while they're still on bypass.
Yeah, it changed everything. That was one of the I had forgotten about that. It was a game changer. Absolute game changer.
Dr. Fiore, do you have anything you want to add as far as the advances in the last 20 years that you've seen?
Yeah, there's a lot to say. I mean, obviously, once they discovered prostaglandins would keep the ductus open, that was a big, big advantage because that saved countless lives. And kids who were ductal dependent, either for blood flow to the lungs or blood flow to the body. It can be either or. They survived. If they were born and they got on PG, you had time to deal with their problem. So that was a big game changer. And as I think about it, in terms of what changed the needle surgically, I would say 3 or 4 things. Depends how far back you go. You can say heparin, yes, but getting into sort of the last 30, you said 20 years, 20 to 30 years, I would say 3 things really move the needle. The 4th being transesophageal echo, which I forgot to mention. But the first one would be the ability to stop the heart, do what you have to do to it, and then start it back up again and have it work perfectly if you did the operation correctly. That's called cardioplegia, or the ability to protect the heart. Once that was discovered, and I might point out some of the absolute key developments in cardioplegia were done here at St. Louis University by Val Willman and Rick Barner and George Kaiser, people I've already mentioned, who came before, and Hillelax, who came before Chuck and I. And so that was a huge advance because that would allow surgeons in the community to do heart surgery and not worry about what was going to happen to the heart after they were done with their, quote, repair, because you had a way to protect it in the operating room that was far superior than anything we had before. So that's one thing. And the other couple of things I think that really move the needle besides what I mentioned is transplantation. Once we were able to transplant a human heart, and I point out Val Willman, George Kaiser, and Rick Barner did the first heart transplant in Missouri and the first heart transplant in the Midwest right here at St. Louis University. And so they moved it, and that was another reason why I wanted to come here, because they were just amazing. Those guys were intrepid surgeons. I mean, they were just unbelievable. Anyway, transplantation, which has been going on at Glennon with one minor exception continuously since transplantation was started in the United States. It's been going on here continuously with one minor little glitch for a couple of months. But so that's a key thing, because when you get to the end of the line, as they speak, with reconstruction, you may be able to transplant a heart. And that, and in conjunction with that, of course, are assist devices, which Glenn Pennington developed here, which I'll come to in a minute, which bridge the gap between the end of reconstructive surgery and the beginning of transplantation. That bridge, heart failure, so-called bridge to transplant, were assist devices, again developed by Glenn Pennington, who was one of the 4 surgeons here when I came. So that's another big advance, another reason why I wanted to come here, because I knew they were doing all those things at St. Louis University. And then I guess the other thing that moved the needle more currently is the treatment of single ventricle. About a third of our practice is single ventricle patients. And they always were, for years and years and years, there was not a lot, the hypoplastic left heart syndromes, the hypoplastic right heart syndromes. Those patients did not do well, especially the hypoplastic left heart syndromes. They did horribly. There was no treatment hardly, except transplantation. And then, not so much here, but in other programs, reconstructive techniques would develop for hypoplastic left and right heart syndrome. And that moved the needle, because now those kids, and as you know, doing really well. There's one right over there, right? It's a hypoplastic left heart syndrome, his baby, and is doing really, really well with reconstructive surgery. And so those, from a surgical, not a cardiology, but from a surgical standpoint, I think those things are, when you add in cardiology, you would have to bring in all the transcatheter interventions, right? Balloon dilatation, stenting, and valve implants done by the cardiologist, not the surgeon.
Just want to point out that Dr. Fiore is pointing at producer Aaron, who you can listen to in a previous episode talk about his son Rowan Wright and his journey.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So back in the day, so I remember this generation with some of the OGs you've mentioned, Dr. Fiore. So when I came to Glennon, Dr. Pennington was here, and he was the only heart surgeon that we had. So Barb, I'm going to lean on you to describe, because I think both of you would agree that your work doesn't occur in a silo. You are very much part of a team, and that team has grown and evolved exponentially through the years. So I believe when I came here, we had a Dr. Pennington, and we had maybe 4, 5, 6 cardiologists, maybe. So, right. So talk to me about the evolution and where the team was, say, 20, 30 years ago, and what it has evolved to.
Well, when I started with Dr. Fiore, it started part-time. His nurse was part-time, and I would help him out when his nurse wasn't here. And then realized that it was a good team, that we were a good team. And then, long story short, I got hired to take over that position. And I think at the time, from our service, it was me, Mary Holmberg, a PA who operated with Dr. Fiore, and Dr. Fiore. It was just the three of us. And then at the time, it was Dr. Chen, Dr. El Giardini, and Dr. Balfour. I don't think Dr. Rao was here yet.
Dr. Nuri.
Dr. Nuri. Yeah. But, at the time, the two services worked very well together, because Dr. Fiore would be operating and Mary would be in the OR with him. And I had to have someone to rely on to help me take care of the babies post-op while they were scrubbed in. So the relationship between cardiology and CTS became very intertwined. And I do think that those in the cardiology department, as well as Dr. Fiore and Mary and I, can take credit for creating the atmosphere that I think still exists between those two services. And although their service has grown exponentially to the tune of now, I think, 13 cardiologists, several nurse practitioners that work on their service, as well as the nurse navigators. And on our service, since then, we've gained a surgeon. We got Dr. Huddleston, and then Dr. Tan joined us. And then in the meantime, there were an additional 3 advanced practice people hired to work with our service also. So I think we grew it from a small group of people that were very close and worked very well together. And I think it started that way, and I think it's still that way. I think our services work very well together.
Well, and I'm glad that you both assume credit for that, as you should, for pulling that together. It is.
I'll take credit for it.
Yeah, that's good.
He was operating. I was on the outside.
So I do want to talk about you, Barb, for a minute and your role. And in your role, you are responsible for pre-op and post-op teaching, scheduling clinic, scheduling surgical cases. You're kind of this liaison between any of the departments involved in the care of all the cardiothoracic surgery patients. You're kind of the point person for the families, right? So what about the team or about the hospital, the place? What gives people trust that they are in the right place? Because that's huge. These families are going through pivotal journeys. What do you think it is? What's the glue? What's the thing that gives families that confidence? Do we have something that other institutions don't? Or what do you think it is?
There's a feeling, it starts a lot of times I meet the patients in the fetal care area and get to know them. Always give them my contact number so that they can always get a hold of one of us. If I don't know the answer to their question, I can put them in contact with one of the surgeons. As well as in the pre-op clinic, people kind of let their hair down a little bit more. They get to know us as people as well as the healthcare professionals. And I think there's a level of comfort that they feel. Of course, we've got excellent results. We've got excellent surgeons. That drives us, obviously. If we didn't have excellent surgeons and didn't have good outcomes, we would be in trouble. I think there's just a genuine feeling of just comfort here. I always say that I'm kind of I used to be the mom of the service. Now I'm the grandma of the service in taking care of people. And the child has the surgeons to do the work and repair their heart. The family needs someone to care for them. And that I see that as my role, that I can put my arms around them and we talk through things and, expectations, what to expect afterwards. That, it's not always a smooth sail, but we're going to have some bumps and lumps, but we're going to have to ride the wave. Kind of try and tell them what to be nervous about. And sometimes you just got to let things kind of just ride things out. And I think because of we're upfront and we're honest with them from the very beginning, that I think there's a level of comfort there. And I always tell you, as we all know, we're, 3 minutes from another pediatric hospital. And I always tell families, we get a fair amount of families come over for a second opinion. And I always tell families, your child is going to be well taken care of, whether it be on Kings Highway or Grand. It is where you feel most comfortable in your own skin. And if you feel most comfortable here, we'll take very good care of you and your baby.
It's such a huge way to think about it. Well, and we've had a nationally ranked cardiology and cardiothoracic surgery program for years. I mean, it's kind of humbling to know that it's been such a strong program. I know both of you have mentioned the growth and some of the changes over the years, but since you have been at the cardiology department and the cardiothoracic surgery department at Cardinal Glennon for so long, are there any key things that you can speak to about how the growth or the evolution has impacted our ability to be a nationally ranked center of excellence for so many years?
Well, yeah, I can answer that. I mean, the first thing you have to realize is that we've had cardiac surgery at Cardinal Glennon continuously since the hospital opened in 1950-something, 6 or 5, right? And it was started by two very famous and intrepid surgeons, Rollo Hanlon and Val Willman, people I've mentioned. Rollo Hanlon had a congenital operation named after him, right? So Val Willman and Rollo Hanlon were founding fathers of congenital heart surgery, and they worked here in St. Louis. And from the late 50s, into about 1970, when Hilla Lax came, an excellent South African surgeon. He was trained in Boston, which was and continues to be Boston Children's Hospital, one of the key centers in the United States for treatment of congenital heart disease. And he came to St. Louis University. I was a medical student. I worked with him. He was an excellent technical surgeon. And over the years, he left here, went to Yale, went to Los Angeles. But he has made numerous extremely important contributions to our specialty. So he contributed. So now you got 3 surgeons. And when he left, Glenn Pennington came. And Glenn made 2 really, really important contributions to cardiac surgery at Glennon and in St. Louis. What did he do? Well, he really started the transplant program. The first heart transplant at Cardinal Glennon was done by Glenn Pennington, not Val. Val did the first transplant, which was an adult, in St. Louis, but Glenn did the first pediatric transplant at Glennon. But more than that, and people lose sight of this, Glenn Pennington, along with Steve Rathel, perfusionist, Brian Lahapidu, perfusionist, and Tammy Greco, built the first ECMO machine, right? ECMO, now we have, SARNs, we have Terumo, they built ECMO. Glenn Pennington was really the founding father of ECMO at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. And they built crude machines. I remember them on wooden, you remember them on wooden rollers. We'd roll them in. They were hand-built by those three perfusionists under the guide and mentorship of Glenn Pennington. And think about it. I mean, ECMO saves more lives in a month than most of us heart surgeons, right? So Glenn's contribution to transplantation and to some degree assist devices, but the main one was ECMO. He started ECMO at Cardinal Glennon, and that was a huge thing. And then the next phase was Chuck Huddleston. And Chuck,
there was someone between.
Well, Glenn
Pennington.
So
and
there was
Huddleston.
Chuck. Chuck came, and Chuck made. I think, as I think about it, brought three very, very important things to the practice. Number one, he was an established congenital heart surgeon in the state of Missouri, so he brought with him his own referral-based patients. But that was peanuts compared to what he really did. What he really did was he introduced several new operations that we weren't even doing here. Without going into a lot of detail, they were complex operations that I hadn't done, and he taught me how to do them. It's like I always said, I became a much better congenital heart surgeon because of Chuck Huddleston. And the other thing he did, which is really important, and this speaks to the question you're asking, is he established the national database at Cardinal Glennon. What does that mean? Well, we hired a person off-site to record and keep track of all of our results and enter them into a national database in the United States of America. So now Glennon got on the map because now all our results were in this national database, and we introduced public reporting. So we put it out to people in Missouri, people in Illinois want to find out how good the results are for transposition surgery, hypoplastic. Well, go look. It's public. Go Google it. You can figure it out. Chuck did that. So those three things move the needle. So those people with I think the really important spot. And then there's one other thing he did. Not only those three things, I guess a fourth thing he did was he really brought with him. We were doing some adult congenital, but he brought more adult congenital to Cardinal Glennon, and under his browbeating and really his influence, we established now at Cardinal Glennon, we're a board-certified adult congenital heart surgery institution. So we're nationally recognized as board-certified, and we have, two board-certified cardiologists that do nothing but adult congenital. And keep in mind, now there are more adults with congenital heart disease out there than there are neonates, obviously, right? So because every time you get a neonate, they grow and they go into the adult pool. So the adult pool is far bigger than the neonatal pool. And so that was the other thing that Chuck did. So he really moved the needle tremendously, along with the other people that I mentioned. So
now I'm going to bring up, between Dr. Glenn Pennington and Dr. Chuck Huddleston, there was Dr. Andrew Fiore, who built and maintained a practice, a very busy practice, despite the fact of two huge centers in St. Louis. He kept the Cardinal Glennon cardiothoracic surgery program going, and it was him, with the help of some of the cardiologists, that kept our program to what it is and what it could transpire into. When Dr. Huddleston joined us from Children's, there was a good, solid program for them to join us. And then that was the result of Dr. Andrew Fiore.
Well,
I'm complimenting you. I don't want to
that's
kill
enough.
you now.
That's
I'm just
enough.
complimenting.
No, but there are two
That's
other people
enough.
I need to mention that also moved the needle tremendously. One was Ken Schoengert. Ken came when Dr. Rao left. Ken came and really, as Barb said, we only had three cardiologists, 3 or 4, and he reorganized the whole cardiology division. He made a huge impact. He hired a lot more people, and he made it a very cohesive team where everybody got along. And it was really a great. And then, of course, when he retired, Dr. Vernon Exlet came, and he's just picked up the ball and carried it even further. So you got to mention those guys on the cardiology side. And early on, you need to mention 2 people that. 4 people, I guess, who really hung in there. One was Soraya Nuri, who also started intervention at Cardinal Glennon, along with Saudi Giardini. Those 2 have to be mentioned. And Sue Chen and Ian Balfour. Ian Balfour was the transplant cardiologist, so he kept that going. See, everybody was a spoke on the wheel. And so, you got to mention Saudi and Soraya and Sue Chen and Ian Balfour. They kept the coals burning until we are where we are now. So
There's a lot of love in this room.
Love
lot of
comes
respect.
from the
Lot of
heart.
love.
Yeah.
That was
No
good.
pun intended.
Yeah.
No pun intended. So, Dr. Fiore, you mentioned the accomplishments of many of your predecessors and people who have been at Glennon and all their contributions. What would you say in your career, are you the most proud of?
I would say that because of all the other spokes on the wheel that I've already mentioned, we have been able as a group, we, not me or I, but we as a group have been able to elevate Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital congenital cardiac surgery program to a national level. We have a national presence. Prior to that time, before Chuck came, nobody kind of knew who we were or where we. You mean it's St. Louis Children's? Oh, well, that's St. Louis Children's in St. Louis, right? St. Louis Children's. That's all you hear. And I heard that over and over again at national meetings and in the community and around the country, wherever I was, at a cocktail party in New York City or wherever I was. It was always St. Louis Children's. But we changed that. We, meaning all the people I mentioned, working together, the nursing part, the doctor part, everybody together brought it up to a national presence where it is a well-recognized program nationally. And that, I think, I'm really glad that we were able to accomplish that.
Okay. So that's where we are at. We are there. We have arrived.
Well, we're
Now-
still going.
That's
Yeah.
my next question.
Yeah.
So where are we going? In other words, what are you excited about in the field of cardiothoracic surgery?
yeah,
What's coming down the pike? What are
Yeah.
we excited about?
Well, the most important thing for us right now is obviously Dr. Huddleston and I are at retirement, and we're bringing new surgeons in. So, we hope and expect that they would, continue with the philosophy, I would say, that we have at Cardinal Glennon, in which, we have an unselfish approach, right? So we help each other, right? We always have time for one another, the doctors and the nurses, to help one another. And, we follow that, very important adage. It's amazing what you can get accomplished if you don't focus on who's getting the credit for it, right? That's a very important rule. There's no boss, there's no chief. Forget that stuff. That's the first mistake. Everybody's at the same level, whether it's in the operating room, on the floors, taking care of the babies. We're all, we foster the pronoun we and us, and we don't like I, me, and mine. Those are bad words. We like we and us. So we work together. That's a very important rule. And that I think we have to make sure that when new people come in, they embrace that, right? They have to be able, you don't want to behave in a different way. That's very important. So that's what we're counting on, hoping for in the years ahead. And then, of course, from a surgical point of view, I think what's coming down the pike surgically. Well, I think the two areas I think that are really going to maybe move the needle will be more and more transcatheter intervention. Right, it'll keep getting better. So now they replace the pulmonary valve in the cath lab. They replace the aortic valve in the cath lab. Well, pretty soon they're going to be, and they are starting to do mitral repairs already in the cath lab, and they'll do tricuspid repairs and replacement. So there'll be more and more intervention by cardiologists and less by the surgeons. But you say, will the heart lung machine ever become extinct? Yeah, someday it will, for sure, but probably not in the immediate future, particularly since we don't have a cure or cause of most congenital, not all, but most congenital defects, right? So we don't know what causes them, so we don't have any preventive treatment yet. And the other area that I think is common, although it's lagging, unfortunately, is genetically engineered valves. When you have to replace a heart valve, the problem, we obviously try to repair them always, but if we have to replace them, we have to use an artificial valve, which doesn't grow with the patient. And so that's a never-ending problem. So hopefully, and they are working, what we need is a valve prepared, made from, and functional from the patient's own genetic material or a genetic derivative from mom or dad or both. But we need something which will grow with the patient that's genetically not recognized as foreign. And so that will obviate the need for continued operations to replace valves.
And so does all of that kind of feed our adult congenital heart program and the need for that to be robust and keep growing as well?
Yeah, it's crucial. I mean, as Barb pointed out, the maternal fetal medicine end on the beginning end and the adult side on the other end, you don't want to lose, either one of those ends, if you will, right? The neonatal and maternal fetal medicine, where they diagnose in utero, which makes a huge difference for the reasons Barb said. And you don't want to lose, and you must not lose, the adult congenital side, because that population is exponentially growing.
What's been the response for our adult congenital heart program?
It's been huge. I mean, we have, as Dr. Fiore said, the population keeps growing. And not only do we have the 2 board-certified physicians, but the 2, there's a PA, Anna Quinn, and Am, who's the nurse navigator for that service. And they have really brought that service. It's a well-oiled machine. They start working with the families when they're in their later teens. There are all kinds of issues that are involved when these kids become adults. Their ability to work, their ability to carry their own insurance. And these 2 ladies are going in and doing it from the front end instead of trying to chase after it after the fact. So they're getting a hold of these families and a hold of these kids in their later teenage years to get them prepared to go into the adult congenital program.
And I love that, because I can tell you as a mama, those mamas are thinking about that when they're 4 and 5 already, so it's already on their brains.
Right. So they, like I said, I mean, the physicians, they're okay. But the nurses have really done a phenomenal job at really reaching out to these families. And again, like you said, for the parents, they're only going to get older, and they need to know there's going to be someone there to help take care of their child, even though in the adult world. And there have been so many times kids wind up back in the ER, in the adult world, because they haven't been followed, because they didn't have insurance, and they couldn't get insurance, so they couldn't afford to be cared for, or they didn't realize that they needed to be followed for the rest of their lives. They implant, this is your life. You will be followed for the rest of your life with these cardiologists.
It's just that physicians and nurses are intelligent people, but what you need is experience, right? And so when a patient with an adult with congenital heart disease shows up in an adult facility where nobody really knows a tremendous. It's not because they can't learn it. Sure, they can learn it, but they don't experience it every day. It's not the kinds of patients they see, and so then this thing comes in. I don't know. Remember that. So that's why it's so important to have centers of excellence that can take care of kids with now adults with congenital heart disease, because it's kind of a different kettle of fish, right? It's different.
And there's no price tag you can put on that gift of continuity. When someone has,
that's right.
When
That's
you've
right.
grown up with an institution, to keep that same institution and familiarity is massive.
And families like that, and patients like that, and generally, that's part of. I should comment more about what I think Barb's role is, but if the family really bonds with the hospital, the child does too, the patient does, and they'll continue to come back here. They're not going to go somewhere else. No, that's where I want to go.
Right.
And that's what you got to do. That's a key point. And in your care of these people, you have to keep them. You know, it's with your.
There's something to be said with the comfort that comes with the care, along with the continuity.
Yep, comfort. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean, I'm humbled and I'm inspired by the two of you and just everything that we've talked about with this center. Dr. Fiore, you lightly mentioned it. You've technically retired, but fortunately for us, you haven't gone far. I mean, just today, we were talking about your scheduling because you were, scrubbing in and scrubbing out of a procedure earlier today. But can you tell us now in your retired life what your official title is and what your role is? For the future of pediatric cardiothoracic surgeons?
I'm really kind of, I mean, I don't do very much. I help out in the OR as they need me to do things. I'm available to do it and help cover when people are out of town. But I don't have the responsibility of patient care where I speak to families and see new patients. I don't think I should do that at my age. I don't think it's appropriate, so I don't do that. But I do help out in the OR as much as I can.
His families, when they see him, are thrilled to death. When they see him running down the hall in his usual fashion, they love to see him. Even if he isn't the one doing the operation, they take comfort in knowing that he's in the OR with their child, and it brings a lot of comfort to them. And we like having him around most times. Most times being there.
I have some minimal, and it's really minimal, not trivial, but minimal academic responsibilities left. But, they're getting less and less. And the other thing is when new people come in, it's just not a good idea. The old guys kind of back away and give them a chance. I think it's very important when you're, mentoring somebody is let them grow and get out of their way. Don't have your hand on them. Just let them do their thing. And so, because, that's what Chuck and that's what we did here together. We built it to where we wanted it. It's in a place that he and I are very happy about it.
Okay, so when you aren't here helping out, scrubbing in, mentoring, doing that kind of thing, who are you? What are your passions? What do you spend your time doing?
Well, I have three things.
Driving his wife crazy.
Driving my wife crazy. No.
It's her turn.
Yeah, right. No. Well, I obviously I have a family. I have 3 children. And so I have 3 things that I do. One is my family, my wife and my 3 kids. I'm involved in their lives. But then I have my own 2 things that I really enjoy doing. One is I'm a very avid fisherman. I fish all over the world, but I mainly fish in the United States, mainly in Canada. I make multiple trips up there. So I do a lot of fishing in Canada with some other retired cardiac surgeons, I might add, and medical school classmates from SLU. We all have a little club and we do a lot
fishing group.
Yeah, a little fishing group.
What a group that would be.
Yeah, that is. It's interesting. Good guys, all, solid people that are, like me, retired from heart surgery, or somewhat retired. I'm probably the only one still really doing anything. But and then I have a farm. I do a lot of farming. I'm from Brooklyn. I don't know a damn thing about farming. But fortunately, I have some neighbors who are brilliant farmers, and they're very smart. And let me emphasize to you that farming is very tricky, and you really have to know what you're doing. And I've learned a lot from my neighbors in southern Missouri who people like Charlie Davis, Larry Rome, Lynn Sharp, my cousin Hank Newcomb. Those guys have really, I mentioned them specifically, Charlie Davis, Larry Rome, Lynn Sharp, Hank Newcomb. They have really helped me a lot, and Randy Rome, learn how to be a great hobby farmer and not make any mistakes and not injure yourself.
So I'm like the furthest thing from a farmer. So what do you farm? Do you farm crops, animals? I don't even know. I don't know anything about no animals.
I got to remember I'm from Flatbush. So I'm going to forget the animals. No animals. No, we
no goats. Chickens.
No. That's a whole. Now all of the people I mentioned, these are highly experienced, highly successful farmers in southern Missouri. Very smart people. I mean that, extremely bright people. They run cattle. They really know what they're doing. They have cattle. I don't. That's another big step, and I will not take that.
So
step.
What you farming?
So it's very simple. I have hay. I farm hay.
Okay.
So, and which I obviously have no cattle, so I farm hay. I grow hay, and I cut it, rake it, and bale it, and sell it to people in the region who don't have adequate amounts of hay for their cattle. But it's a hobby. I'm a hobby farmer. I'm not. I mean, there's some major farming down there, which like I said, I mentioned the names of people who are extremely bright, very successful farmers.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
So when I need hay for my front porch next fall, can I come to you?
That's straw.
That's
probably straw.
Oh, that's straw.
Yeah, that's different.
Okay, see how little
wheat.
I know? I don't know.
Well, I didn't know any of this either, but my neighbors who I mentioned have taught me that that's not hay, that's straw.
Well, can you help for the layperson, because I can't imagine many farmers are listening to this podcast yet.
Yeah, that's what
what is the difference between hay and straw? Because I feel like people like me, you don't think there's a difference between hay and straw.
Straw actually is wheat. That's, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, when you cut wheat after it's tasseled out, the result, not the part that you grind into flour, but the stem after you take off the part that is ground into flour, the stem that results if you bale it, that's straw.
Okay.
Oh.
So straw is the leftover from like the wheat germ.
I think. I hope a lot of people are going to look at this and say, "What's he talking about?" But anyway,
if they come on this podcast and fact check you for that,
I'm not sure about that. But I don't deal with straw, so I don't know a lot. I do grow wheat a little bit, not a lot, but I don't. I think that's what straw is. But hay is actually a mixture of a lot of different plants that grow in a field, like timothy and orchard grass and fescue, of course, and canary grass, Johnson grass, all different types of grasses, which grow at different times of the year, and then we cut them and rake them and bale them, and because in the wintertime cattle need it. They can't survive without it.
Well, they need it for nutrition and probably also for insulation and warmth.
Yeah, in the growth, and they have to grow, keep growing so they can be sold eventually. So anyway, so it's a valuable. And part of the problem is that the not just not completely true, but most of the fields that you cut hay out of, that's not quite true, but usually true. You can't also graze those fields. Now they do a little, but when you have a field, it's either going to be grazed by cattle or you're going to make hay out of it. So, and I don't have any cattle, so I have hay, so it's valuable.
Maybe in another 10 years you'll decide to do
cattle.
No,
cattle. No. It's like, I had enough with the intensive care unit. It's like, really, you have to be basically a veterinarian. You have no idea the knowledge you have to have. It's I never knew it.
You don't want to do that wrong.
No. No, that's a cattle or a line in the sand for me. No.
a line in the straw.
Line in the straw, right?
Barb, we're going to go back, ask the same kind of question to you. So when you're not at Cardinal Glennon meeting with families and kissing babies, who are you? What are you doing? What's your passion?
I love spending time with family. I love to travel. He's going to kill me. I do gamble. I like to play slots. Kind of a mindless game. But most importantly, I love spending time with my family and my grandbabies. You really like them even more than your own. I mean, I love mine, but I really love my grandbabies. So yeah, that's kind of boring.
No, not boring.
I'm not farming. not building things. I'm not a crafter. I don't know.
That might be a good thing.
Hence the
I don't
reason
know.
retirement's not in my future. I'm just going to keep working.
So speaking of retirement,
Oh, dear.
when Dr. Huddleston spoke at Dr. Fiore's retirement celebration, he mentioned that leaders like to leave an institution or group of people better than it was when they came to it. So, Barb, what do you want to have left Cardinal Glennon when you retire?
Compassion for the child, but as well as the family and as well as the healthcare providers. I've developed a strong relationship, not just with the families that we serve, but also with the staff that take care of our babies. It's important to keep them, as Dr. Fiore talks about the spoke, it's important to keep them in, letting them know how important they are to the success of our program. One of the nurses in the ICU one day introduced me to one of the new nurses and said, "This is Barb. She's like the grandmother of the ICU." And I'm like, can I just be the mother? I'm going to be the grandmother already? I don't look like him. I don't look like him and Dr. Huddleston. I ain't got the gray hair. I'm smarter than they are. But anyway, I guess I hope when I leave, people will take the way I handle people and the way I treat people. I don't care if they're the nurse at the bedside, if it's the housekeeping staff, the guys that are cleaning the floors, that you just offer kindness to everybody, and that what everybody's doing is just as important as what we're doing, because they're keeping the hospital clean, they're feeding the people. And I guess when I leave, I hope people are kindness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Fiore, Laura and I both work for the foundation. We understand the need for philanthropic support for the hospital and all the amazing things that the two of you get to participate in for that exceptional care and that patient experience. Why should people support an institution like Cardinal Glennon?
Well, as Barb pointed out, it's a highly successful congenital cardiac surgery program in terms of its results, and we provide all aspects of care short of lung transplantation. And the compassion, the relationships between the families, the patients, and the doctors and the nurses, mainly fostered by Barb, is fantastic. And and I think when people come here for a second opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, Barb, it's pretty common that they stay. They don't go back elsewhere when they actually come and experience the relationships that we develop. And I think Barb, that's why our results are made public. You can go look at them. They speak for themselves. So that from a technical standpoint, you can get a great result. And I think the other aspects of the care that Barb mentioned is there as well, and that sort of solidifies it. And I just want to emphasize that you really need someone like Barb to have a successful congenital cardiac surgery program, because on one hand, you have a surgeon who's kind of in one level of sphere, and then you have patients and families at another level. And really, when the surgeon meets these families, kind of a stranger. Who is this guy or gal? Operate on my child. So there's this level of uncertainty. There's a level of a little bit scared, and so you need this bridge, Barb, this bridge to link the surgeon with the patient and the family. Without that bridge, not good. So I really emphasize having a person. And the other thing about it is, and this is the hard part, you can train the surgeon to do the switch and the Norwood correctly, but it's not so simple to train somebody to do what Barb does. It's almost a natural. I thought about this a lot the last couple of days when I was going through this. It's a talent which you can't really train somebody to do. They either have it or they don't. And, Barb has it. It's that ability to form that bond, that bridge between the caregivers and the person, the families, not just the patient, but the families receiving the care. You got to have that joined without any hitches. Got to be a smooth transition like that, right? And that's what she does. And it's hard to find people who can, it's going to be very difficult.
You're kind of touching on it, and I'll get emotional because I can't even picture Cardinal Glennon without the two of you in it. But there's never going to be another you.
Well, no, I'm easy to replace. Let me tell you,
there's not going to be another you. There's not going to be another Dr. Huddleston. There's not going to be another Mary Hohenberg. There's not going to be another Barb.
Yeah.
But regardless of what humans do fill those roles and come after you, what must be present for families? What's the non-negotiable?
Dedication. I think, there's a lot of love that I think we reach out to families for, but I think the real crux of why this has been so successful is the dedication of the people who do it. These surgeons, these crazy surgeons, every morning, 6:30 morning rounds, doesn't matter. Morning,
Christmas, New Year's, doesn't matter.
They leave their families on special occasions. They miss graduations. They miss special family parties because of the dedication. Mary's dedication to our service and doing the same thing, leaving parties to scrub cases, to put kids on ECMO. My dedication to my families. Every family leaves this hospital with my cell phone number. Do I get called a gazillion times? Absolutely not. But they know if they need something, I'm only a phone call away. And even though they may not ever need that phone number, there's a level of comfort knowing that they could get a hold of me. I may not know, but I've got a direct connection to the surgeons. And so I think if there's one thing that we could leave for those that take over for us, is that they can exert the same level of dedication that we all have.
Unselfish dedication. I must admit, I'm so glad that I never knew it was going to evolve the way it did, but it really was Camelot. It really was, and it still is, and we just have to keep it that way. And I think what Barb said is really the key to the whole thing: unselfish dedication. You must help one another. Like I said, it's amazing what you can get accomplished if you never focus on who's getting the credit for it. It's a very important rule.
Well, I think we've not just been good nurses and surgeons and PAs and nurse practitioners, but we've all are friends. We've laughed a lot. We've cried a lot. He and I have been together. We lost both of our parents while we've been together. I've lost a niece. He lost a nephew. My accident. We've been through an enormous amount together with the good and the bad. I started working with him when his children were 9 months old. He's been through the birth of all my grandkids and has had to hear about it ad nauseum. He's had to have second opinions. I could call him, my dad, blah, blah, blah. They want to, okay, hold on, I'll call you right back. They'll see your dad tomorrow at 9 a.m. So our lives have been very intertwined, not just professionally, but personally. I worked with Lee, his wife. I precepted her as a nurse before Dr. Fiore came over. I knew way more about this man than I should have, just because when you work together with...
Really, Barb?
Yeah. I had to kind of block some of it out. But anyway, and then, so my relationship with his wife, has continued to grow because, again, our lives have been very intertwined professionally and personally, and it's been a real honor. I feel like I'm a better person.
Likewise, my dear.
For what we have done together.
Likewise. I agree. Likewise.
Don't be a crybaby.
Well, not to add to it, but Dr. Fiore, if I may, almost 10 years ago, I was granted the opportunity to take a camera around around the operating rooms.
Yeah, right.
And
It
was an early morning, because surgeries start early in the morning. And my task was just to photograph what was happening around the operating room at that time. And I remember you were coming around and starting your ritual, if I may, for a pre-operation. And I had the ability to capture some photographs of you and your prayers and your pacing, what the two of you mentioned earlier in this episode, and the impact that it had on me, seeing how I could see right then and there you truly believed that when you prayed, when you were going to operate on a patient, you truly that the hand of God would work through you for that patient. And I wanted to thank you for that opportunity to be able to see that and to know the level of your faith and your devotion to our patients every single day.
Thank you.
You know, over the years, I used to be in the OR a lot. I never did anything other than look around and report back to people what was going on. So I never served an actual role in the OR, but I would go back, and as much as I would squawk outside of the OR, which I did squawk a lot, I never said anything in the operating room because I was so humbled by what goes on back there. I mean, what he and Mary and Dr. Huddleston and Dr. Tan, the dedication and the skill to do what they do. Every time I go back not as frequently anymore. If I'm in the OR, everybody gets a little worried that something's going on the outside, so I try not to scare people too much, but it's unbelievable what goes on back there.
Well, we are incredibly humbled to have the two of you here today. And I think in the spirit of that you go about your work under prayerful guidance, we would like to close with a little bit of a prayer over the two of you, if that's okay. Okay. Whew. Father, we know that our hospital has some of the best medical care in the world, and we do not take these two amazing humans nor their team for granted. We come to you with hearts full of gratitude as we close this episode today, and we thank you for the gift of these hands that heal, these minds that teach, and these really huge hearts that serve. We are especially grateful for the dedication of Dr. Fiore, who has given not only his skills, but his wisdom and his time far beyond what is required. Bless his continued work as he mentors our future healers and continues to bring hope to the smallest hearts in need of care. We also thank you for the tireless service of his partner in this mission, the most incredible Barb, for her compassion and her coordination and her presence, which makes an immeasurable difference to every single family that she touches. May she continue to shine as an example of love in action, and may her efforts be a reflection of your grace working through her. Lord, may your peace and healing surround every patient and family in their care. And may those who serve at Cardinal Glennon continue to be guided by your light as they all carry out this sacred work.
Amen.
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 Nice.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That's very nice. Very beautiful.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Glennon Factor. Make sure you follow The Glennon Factor and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Visit Glennon.org if you would like to learn more about how you can support Cardinal Glennon kids. And while you're there, feel free to share any feedback or episode suggestions on our podcast page. The Glennon Factor is recorded and produced by SSM Health Cardinal Glennon Children's Foundation.